to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, Malma Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. And joining me today is from our EBC Vietnam Bureau. Hello, Crystal.
Hello, Alma. I'm Crystal Ann Ballesteros from your EBC Cambodia Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. Malacanang said the Philippines has added 6 more countries to the list of nations covered by temporary travel restrictions to prevent the spread of the new strain of coronavirus discovered in the United Kingdom.
The Philippine National Police, or PNP, said there was no lapse on the part of the Makati City Police in its investigation on the death of flight attendant Christine Angelica Dacera.
High number of infections was discovered at a seafood cannery in Thailand's Samut Sakhon province, and we'll be getting an update from our EBC Thailand Bureau.
Dozens of palm-sized baby turtles flipped and flopped on the beach as they made their way towards the crashing waves of the Indian Ocean under the watchful gaze of conservationists at a national park in Indonesia.
Malacanang said the Philippines has added 6 more countries to the list of nations covered by temporary travel restrictions to prevent the spread of the new strain of COVID-19 discovered in the United Kingdom. The Office of the President, upon the joint recommendation of the Department of Health and the Department of Foreign Affairs, included Portugal, India, Finland, Norway, Jordan, and Brazil as among the countries' jurisdiction subject to travel restrictions, according to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque in a statement. The countries joined the list of travel restrictions earlier imposed on travelers from the UK, Denmark, Ireland, Japan, Australia, Israel, the Netherlands, Hong Kong, SAR, Switzerland, France, Germany, Iceland, Italy, Lebanon, Singapore, Sweden, South Korea, South Africa, Canada, and Spain. Foreign passengers coming from or who have been to Portugal, India, Finland, Norway, Jordan, and Brazil within 14 days immediately preceding arrival in the Philippines will be prohibited from entering the country from January 8, 12:01 a.m. Manila time to January 15. On the other hand, foreign passengers coming from or who have been to the above-mentioned countries' jurisdictions within 14 days immediately preceding arrival in the country, arriving before January 8 of this year, 12:01 a.m. Manila time, will be allowed to enter the Philippines. However, they will be required to undergo an absolute facility-based 14-day quarantine period, even if they obtain a negative reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction test result. Filipino citizens coming from or who have been to the countries or jurisdictions mentioned within 14 days immediately preceding arrival in the country, including those arriving after January 8, 12:01 a.m. Manila time, will be allowed to enter the Philippines. They will be required to undergo an absolute facility-based 14-day quarantine period, even if they obtain a negative RT-PCR test result. Filipino and foreign passengers transiting through the mentioned jurisdictions, countries will be covered by the rules as provided in the memorandum from the Executive Secretary dated December 31. As for incoming unaccompanied minor Filipino passengers from countries or jurisdictions where travel restrictions are in place on account of the new variant of the virus, they will not be allowed entry from January 8 until January 15, except minors returning through the repatriation program of the national government. Now, these repatriated minors will be turned over to the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration House Parent who, in coordination with the Department of Social Welfare and Development, will ensure the minors' safety and their observance of quarantine protocols. All unaccompanied minor Filipino citizens who are not part of the repatriation program of the national government arriving before January 8, 12:01 a.m. will be turned over to an authorized DSWD officer who can ensure the minors' safety and their observance to quarantine protocols.
National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. said that the Philippines and Colombia are the first two countries to participate in the World Health Organization Solidarity Vaccine Trials scheduled for this month. He also said that 15,000 volunteers from the country will participate in the said trial.
This month, the Philippines and Colombia will be the first two countries to take part in WHO Solidarity Vaccine Trial. 15,000 volunteers from the Philippines will be participating the said trial. At excited po talaga ang taga Metro Manila dahil ang target po ay 15,000 people from Metro Manila at yan po ay tanggapan po ng DOST at po ang PGH ay i-implement po ito. Ito po ay para malaman po natin na magkaroon po ng full evaluation for the safety and efficacy of the candidate vaccine.
The proliferation of the highly contagious novel coronavirus strain, first detected in Britain, has now been confirmed in 41 countries and territories, according to the World Health Organization in its COVID-19 weekly epidemiological update on Tuesday evening. According to the WHO bulletin over the past week, from December 28 to January 3, the number of people infected with COVID-19 increased globally by 4,035,226 and the number of deaths by 76,017. Most of the new infections were detected in the Americas, 1,935,621. Europe is in second place with 1,553,332 and Southeast Asia, which is third at 208,592. On December 14, the United Kingdom's Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, Matt Hancock, said that British scientists had identified a new coronavirus strain that might be to blame for high infection rates in southeastern England. The South African countries on December 21 said the second wave of the pandemic was due to mutated coronavirus detected in the south of the country in the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality, Eastern Cape province on the Indian Ocean. Local scientists say the new strain harms mostly young people.
National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. assured the public that the government is ready for the new COVID-19 variant detected in some countries. National Task Force Deputy Chief Implementer Secretary Vince Dizon clarified that no new variant of COVID-19 has been seen in the Philippines.
Nung mula na nagkaroon po tayo ng balita ng strain na nito na variant, ay nag-prepare na po ang DOH at ang IATF. Si Secretary Vince talagang pinrepare na yung ground. Unang-una, nakita natin yung lahat ng mga dumadaan dito sa one-stop shop. Yung lahat ng mga galing sa mga restricted countries na mga OFW ay dinadala po natin kaagad yung mga nag-positive doon sa isolation facility doon sa tinatawag nating sa New Clark City. And nakita rin natin na yung mga countries na identified na may variant ay ina-extend natin na 14 days. Kaya po humihingi po kami ng paumanhin sa ating mga OFW at saka ating mga returning Filipinos na talaga pong yung protocol. Nakikita natin na lahat ng mga bansa na mayroon po talagang pag-iingat ay ginagawa po din natin. Sa ngayon po, nakita po natin ang ating IATF ay tuloy-tuloy po ang pagpupulong para po mapulong ang ating mga scientifico at saka mga expert kung ano po ang mga hakbang na ginagawa po natin. At nandyan din po ang WHO na nagbibigay po ng tinatawag natin na pangaral sa atin kung ano ang mga preparasyon na gagawin natin. Sa atin po, ako po ay nakakasiguro sa ating mga Pilipino na tayo po ay prepared at na ibigay na po natin kay SILG na bigyan ng babala rin ang kanilang ating mga mayors at saka mga governors na tingnan at i-monitor yung tinatawag nating syndromic surveillance at saka case finding. At inano rin po na talagang maigting na depensa po natin talaga is yung minimum health standard. Yung pa rin ang pinaka-basic po natin na preparasyon.
Gusto ko lang dagdagan yung sinabi ni Sec Galvez. Nagpalabas na po ang statement ang ating Department of Health na dun sa mahigit 300 cases na tinest galing sa mga iba't ibang bansa na may known variant na bago galing sa UK, wala pong nagpositibo para sa new variant as of now. No? So, importante po yan at tuloy-tuloy po ang pag-analyze ng Philippine Genome Center at ng RITM nitong mga specimen na ito na dumarating galing sa ibang bansa. Kaya abangan po natin, pero as of now, wala pa pong nakita sa mga dumating na Pilipino at ibang mga dayuhan yung COVID variant galing sa UK.
In the Laging Handa special public briefing, the World Health Organization representative Dr. Socorro Escalante said that the Philippines is in its ongoing cooperation with the WHO and is also ready for the implementation of the nationwide vaccine. Let's listen in.
Question of how does the Philippines fare in terms of our readiness in deploying or accepting the vaccines in the country. Ang WHO po have fielded key criteria by which a country will be ready for vaccines deployment. Ang unang-una po dyan is first that the country has a national vaccines deployment plan, which we understand that the Department of Health along with Secretary Galvez and other sectors are already developing and in the final stage of development. Ang pangalawa po, yung tinatawag natin na regulatory readiness. Naka-ready po ba yung FDA natin to accept the applications of the vaccines? And it's very important to note that in the Philippines, the President has signed the executive order to authorizing the FDA to grant emergency use authorization for vaccines and also to rely or to recognize assessment of these vaccines from other stringent regulatory authorities. So that is a very important step that makes the country ready, because the first filter for vaccines to be deployed in the country is about the regulatory process to ensure that all vaccines coming into the country are of safe, efficacious, and of good quality. Ang pangatlo po na basihan ng country readiness is whether yung cold chain natin is ready. And as I have seen in the previous slides, the ultra cold chain is very important because ito po yung bagong teknolohiya ng RNA. Wala po tayo dati dyan na cold chain. But we know that the country has already existing some cold chain equipment, even in our ITM, and the government is ready to deploy the ultra cold chain and in addition, strengthen the cold chain of the country. Ang pang-apat po na criteria is the safety monitoring of the vaccines. Bagong-bago po ang mga bakunang ito. At magkakaroon po yan ng mga adverse events. So, hindi na all vaccines have the potential or the risk of having an adverse event or unexpected event after po na ma-deploy natin yung vaccine. So it's very important to have that monitoring process. And the FDA and at ating EPI program is already working on the protocol to monitor the vaccine. So in short po, there are some aspects that are very important for the vaccine's readiness which the Philippines has already put in place. Magtuloy-tuloy pong nagtatrabaho ang gobyerno with the support of WHO to ensure that all these processes, including the safety monitoring of the vaccines, will be in place bago po pumasok yung bakuna sa bansa. The Philippines is on track in terms of its preparation for the vaccines introduction and for the vaccines rollout, including the distribution of the vaccines across the country. Pero gusto ko po din sanang i-emphasize that this is a very complex vaccination intervention. At kaya po, kailangan po nating intindihin as a public of how and what are the goals of the vaccination para maintindihan po natin kung paano dinidistribute ang gobyerno yung mga bakuna. Kagaya po ng nasabi natin, for example, the first priority will be the health workers because the rationale is to protect our health workers to sustain our public health system for COVID-19. So with that, yan po yung unang isi-set up ng government kung paano po mababakunahan yung mga health workers, and then it will be rolled out to the different population.
The World Health Organization says that there's no indication COVID virus variant identified in South Africa more contagious than variant identified in UK. They also said that the vaccines being developed now still works.
It's not catastrophic in the sense that it means that it's out of control and there's nothing that we can do. We still can use the measures, as Mike has said, as you've heard me say, we can still use the measures of physical distancing and hand hygiene, staying home if you're unwell, isolate if you're a case, quarantine if you're a contact. These break chains of transmission, and this will work with this variant. We have no indication that there's an impact on the vaccines that are being rolled out. That's very good news. The same types of studies are happening in South Africa with the variant that was identified in South Africa. This is this 501Y.V2. But it is important for the viewer to understand that these mutations do happen. So there's a lot of study that's underway. But the good news is that neither of these variants appear to cause more severe disease. There may be increased transmissibility, but it doesn't mean that the measures at hand don't work. They do work.
That the vaccines as currently developed would not work in the case of this variant. Certainly, the data from the laboratory assays that have been developed for this, they still work in the case of for both. And there is work going on in labs now looking at animal models, and we'll also be looking at other very specifically designed studies to track this over time. But right now, everyone should be assured, right now, as far as we can see, the data is pointing to these vaccines still being effective, and we're not overly concerned that is going to change. But at the same time, we're driven by the data, we're driven by the science, and we're doing the studies that are needed to ensure these vaccines continue to work. Even if there was a change in that, it is actually relatively straightforward to tweak the vaccines. Yeah. So it's even if that were the case, there's still much we can do to tweak that, and that is a great testament to modern science and the way we have much more control over what we can do with vaccines now. Just going back to the concept of the virus evolution. This virus has only probably been in human beings for just over a year. It evolved and emerged and jumped into human populations. What very often happens when a virus jumps into a human system, and we've seen this with Ebola and other diseases, they can tend to be very severe because they don't develop over time. Viruses develop it's not in their interest to kill their host. It is in their interest to be very infectious, not kill the host, and they very often end up choosing a target organ. Sometimes with hepatitis viruses, they attack the liver, and there are different viruses that attack different parts. They develop a kind of an organ that they focus on, and that when a new virus emerges, it tends to affect many organs. It's a bit of in that sense, out of control, and it takes time for the virus to gain what's called fitness, or to become fit, to develop and adapt to the human system. So in this case, fit is not what many of us think. Doesn't mean attractive or sexy. It means they are muscular, or whatever the word is used for nowadays. It means that the virus adapts to the human system, not in a way to kill more people, but in a way to adapt to living in the human system. So what tends to happen is the viruses can become more infectious, but they rarely become more severe.
Of infections was discovered at a seafood cannery in Thailand's Samut Sakhon province. Joining us live from Bangkok, here's Crystal Di Marukot. Hello, Crystal.
Good afternoon, Alma, and to all our viewers around the world. Here are the latest updates here in Thailand. After a proactive screening of about 3,800 workers in local factories, Labor Minister Suchart Chomklin disclosed on Wednesday that more than 900 employees of a seafood cannery in Thailand, coastal province of Samut Sakhon, have been found infected with COVID-19. And the Labor Minister said, and I quote, "Finding 500 new cases or more means we identify the carriers. If we don't conduct proactive tests, more people will get infected, and the cycle of infections will never be stopped." End of quote. He also assured that the government is capable of taking care of those infected. Due to this large increase in cases, officials are considering setting up quarantine areas and field hospitals in the grounds of factories, similar to those in the Central Shrimp Market. There are more than 10,000 factories with workforces, or fewer than 200 factories each. 276 which hire between 201 to 500 employees, and about 100 which employ 500 to 5,000 or more employees. That's a quick update here in Bangkok. Back to you, Alma.
All right, thank you very much. You take care over there. How far is the seafood market from you, Crystal? Is
it is very far because we are in the city of Bangkok,
okay.
and that is maybe 2 hours.
2 hours away. Okay,
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah.
But still, you take care. Take care and
Yeah,
stay
thank
healthy
you.
always.
You
Looking
too.
forward to more updates from Thailand. Thank you very much.
We live in interesting times. Thank you.
In Vietnam, foreign ministers of Vietnam and the U.S. have pledged to enhance cooperation. Here's Eliana Faith Sebastian joining us live. Eliana?
Good afternoon, Crystal. Yes, that's right. Foreign ministers of Vietnam and U.S. agreed to strengthen their ties. And here is an update from Vietnam News Agency. Vietnam and U.S. foreign ministers have vowed to enhance the two countries' cooperation by respecting each other's independence, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political regime. This agreement was made through phone talks on January 6 between Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Pham Binh Minh and U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The close cooperation between the Vietnamese Foreign Ministry and U.S. Department of State over the past years were spoken highly by both parties. This strong relationship had contributed to the promotion of the bilateral comprehensive partnership in a practical manner in various areas. Despite the existence of the COVID-19 pandemic, the flexible organization of joint celebrations for the 25th anniversary of bilateral diplomatic ties had been embraced. The two parties also discussed the ongoing investigation conducted by the U.S. Trade Representative regarding Vietnam's monetary policy and wood materials under Section 301 of the U.S. Trade Act 1974. In order to maintain a stable trade towards attaining harmonious, sustainable, and mutually beneficial trade balance, Minh declared that the Vietnamese ministries and agencies will unceasingly work actively with its U.S. partners to discuss matters regarding both the U.S. and Vietnam. Pompeo, on the other hand, pledged that the U.S. would value maintaining a stable relationship with Vietnam and that it is together with the country towards a strong, independent, and prosperous Vietnam, playing a greater role in the region. Back to you, Crystal.
Thanks for the update, Eliana. You keep safe there.
Stay safe too. Reporting live from Da Nang, Vietnam, this is Aliana Faith Sebastian. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, guys. Crystal and I will be back after this short break.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Nilulutong bagong game show ang Net25 para sa lahat ng mahihilig magmukbang at kumanta. Pag-combine natin yan, equals all-out kantahan at mukbangan in one. Ang headline ng balitang ito ay It's Singing Time!
It's Singing Time! Mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 9 ng gabi. Dito lang sa Net25.
And we're back. Makati City prosecutors on Wednesday ordered a preliminary investigation on the case of 23-year-old flight attendant Christine Angelica Dacera and the release of 3 arrested suspects in the case. After a thorough evaluation of the facts and evidence presented during inquest proceedings, the Office of the City Prosecutor Makati City resolved to refer the case for further investigation and to release the arrested persons, namely John Pascual de la Serna III, Romel Galido E. Daluro, and John Paul Halili E. Reyes, from detention, considering that there is a need to conduct regular preliminary investigation of the case, Prosecutor General Benedicto Malcontento said in a press statement. The hearing for the preliminary investigation of the case was set for January 13. Malcontento said among the things to be determined are whether Dacera had been raped and the actual cause of her death. He added that the same complaint against the other respondents who remain at large, Gregorio Angelo Rafael de Guzman, Clark Rapinan, Valentin Rosales, Mark Anthony Rosales, Ray Ingles, Louis de Lima, Jamir Conanan, and a certain Ed Madrid shall also undergo the same preliminary investigation. In a 3-page resolution, the investigating prosecutor also directed the police officers to submit additional evidence such as the DNA analysis report, toxicology or chemical analysis, and the histopath examination report. Based on initial reports, Dacera and the suspect celebrated New Year's Eve at the City Garden Grand Hotel in Makati City. The victim was found unconscious inside her hotel room on New Year's Day and was rushed to the hospital where she was declared dead on arrival.
In a related news, the Philippine National Police said there was no lapse on the part of the Makati City Police in its investigation on the death of flight attendant Christine Dacera. We will not fault the local police because they were just doing their job. In the desire to have their objective of solving the case is met with such efficiency, they just thought that was it. Since the prosecutor sent back the case for further investigation, that was simply it. Further investigate. PNP spokesperson Brigadier General Ildebrandi Usana said in a message to reporters late on Wednesday. Now, this came after the Makati City Prosecutor's Office ordered the release of 3 arrested suspects and resolved that further investigation is still needed to determine the circumstances behind the Serra's death. But at least, he said, they have started somewhere. Additional evidence is what the prosecutor needs, and that is how the machinery of the justice system works, Mr. Usana added. Usana added that police investigators assigned to the case will just continue their work to attain justice for the Serra. Our investigators, he said, will just continue their work on a case in just a normal fashion. And he added that the challenge to ferret out the truth and serve the ends of justice is everyone's objective. In a 3-page resolution, the investigating prosecutor also directed the police officers to submit additional evidence, such as the DNA analysis report, the toxicology chemical analysis, and the histopath examination report. The hearing for the preliminary investigation of the case was set for January 13. And based on initial reports, the Serra and the suspects celebrated New Year's Eve at the City Garden Grand Hotel in Makati City. The Serra was found unconscious inside her hotel room on New Year's Day and was rushed to the hospital where she was declared dead on arrival.
Malaysian villagers were evacuated in an excavator while others swam through deep waters Wednesday as the number forced from their homes by floods rose to more than 28,000 with at least 4 dead. Flooding hits the country's east coast during the rainy season annually and regularly results in mass evacuations, but people in some areas say these years are the worst in decades. The worst hit state is Pahang, where over 21,000 have been evacuated in recent days, with almost 4,000 forced from their homes in Johor and thousands more in other states. According to the Social Welfare Department, 4 deaths have so far been reported in Pahang and Johor. This year's floods come against the backdrops of worsening coronavirus outbreak, with some fearful they could be exposed to COVID-19 in crowded relief centers. The government insists it has taken steps to prevent the virus spreading, including ordering officials to screen evacuated villagers.
A South Korean delegation left for Iran on Thursday to negotiate the early release of an oil tanker and its crew seized in strategic Gulf waters this week. Iran's Revolutionary Guard said Monday it had seized the South Korean-flagged Hankook Chemi, which it said was carrying 7,200 tons of oil chemical products for infringing maritime environmental laws. The guards also said the arrested crew were from South Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Myanmar. The South Korean delegation, led by the Director General of the Foreign Ministry's Middle Eastern Affairs Department, boarded a plane early on Thursday and was set to arrive in Tehran via Doha. Iran's seizure of the tanker came after Tehran had urged Seoul to release billions of dollars of Iranian assets frozen in South Korea under U.S. sanctions. Iran was a key oil supplier to resource-poor South Korea until Washington's rules blocked the purchases. According to Iran's central bank governor, Abdul Nasser Hemati, the country has $7 billion of deposits in South Korea that can neither be transferred nor do we get any returns on, while they ask us for the costs of holding the funds.
ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
factual,
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
timely information, balanced, not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know. Watch Agila Pilipinas! A one-hour newscast of reports coming from regional hubs in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Know the important updates in Asia in ASEAN in Focus. Track the latest stories in the provinces in Agila Probinsya. Tune into Mata ng Agila, the evening primetime news program of Net25. Balanced and objective, Mata ng Agila covers national and international issues, tackles news on business, health, science, and technology, entertainment, sports and human interest features, and current events. And Eagle News International delivers the latest global reports, impartial, accessible, and up-to-date. It brings to fore EBC's rich international scope and access to valuable information streams.
Well, thank you to thank our help outdoor.
Catch these programs on Net25. You can also watch our news programs through eaglenews.ph and Eagle News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
And we're back. Indonesia said Wednesday it had signed a $9.8 billion electric vehicle battery deal with South Korea's LG as it moves to become a global production hub for the green technology. The agreement was signed in mid-December with investments planned in production and supply chains for lithium batteries, which rely on nickel. Mineral-rich Indonesia is a major producer of the metal. Initial development will kick off in February, including plans for a mine and smelter in the remote Maluku Islands, said Indonesia's Investment Coordinating Board head, Bali Lahadalia. He said, LG have the market and technology, but Indonesia has extraordinary reserves of raw materials. If we combine the two, I believe this investment will make us one of the important players in the world. Some other foreign firms are investing in nickel battery processing plants in Indonesia, including China's Tsingshan Holding Group. US-based electric vehicle maker Tesla has reportedly expressed interest in potential EV battery investments in Indonesia.
In other news, Taguig Pateros Representative Alan Peter Cayetano today pushed for a credible vaccine passport as proof of inoculation that will allow Filipino travelers to reconnect with the rest of the country and the world. Cayetano said the vaccine passport is not just a public health initiative, but also a key element in bringing back public confidence and also to revive the economy. He said, and I quote, "It is therefore essential that we immediately establish a credible certification system, a vaccine passport, which will allow Filipino travelers to reconnect with the rest of the country and the world." He made the proposal after the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases rolled out the government's coronavirus disease vaccination roadmap. He noted that vaccine passports are certificates and are already being used in some countries, particularly citing Bahrain, where the vaccination certificates are provided to individuals after they complete their vaccination schedule. In its media briefing, the IATF said negotiations with various pharmaceutical companies developing the COVID-19 vaccines will eventually yield 148 million doses for the Philippines, more than enough to cover the country's population.
Trade Secretary Ramon Lopez rebutted on Wednesday the claims of car industry groups that the safeguard duties imposed on imported vehicles will result in job losses in the country. Safeguard duty is definitely meant to help and boost local manufacturing revival efforts and meant to protect local jobs in the manufacturing of cars and light commercial vehicles, Lopez said in a Viber message to trade reporters. Both the Chamber of Automotive Manufacturers of the Philippines and the Association of Vehicle Importers and Distributors expressed their concern over the provisional safeguard duties on imported passenger cars and light commercial vehicles. CAMPI or CAMPI President Romel Gutierrez earlier said sales volume of vehicles are expected to be lower due to the safeguard measure on imported vehicles, which will pose risk of employment downsizing. Lopez said the CAMPI's concern on sales shows that they are selling more imported cars. Again, the imported vehicles are not banned. On Monday, Lopez announced that a provisional safeguard duty of 70,000 pesos per unit for imported passenger cars and 110,000 pesos per unit for imported light commercial vehicles will be imposed for 200 days. The decision for the Department of Trade and Industry to slap safeguard duty on imported passenger cars and light commercial vehicles is a result from its preliminary determination, which found out that imported cars have caused serious injury to the domestic market. Lopez said the safeguard measure does not ban imported vehicles and does not stop the businesses of car dealers.
A Bangladeshi migrant worker is suing his ex-employer and dormitory operator in Singapore, accusing them of false imprisonment after he was locked in his room during a coronavirus outbreak. The majority of Singapore's more than 58,000 cases have been among low-paid migrants living in crowded dormitories, sparking criticism of the affluent city-state's treatment of its foreign workforce. Construction worker Rahman Mohammed Hasibur filed a claim last week for 215,000 Singaporean dollars in damages, according to documents submitted in court and seen by AFP. Staff at his dormitory, run by Joylicious Management, had locked Hasibur and up to 20 other workers in their room on April 19 after one of their roommates was thought to have contracted the virus and was transferred to a medical facility. During this time, they were only able to use the toilet by calling a guard to come and escort them, and some of the men were running fevers and the room was hot and poorly ventilated, according to the documents. After Hasibur reached out to TWC2, an NGO that supports migrants, the workers were transferred to a new room with an attached toilet which was also locked from the outside. In total, they were confined for 43 hours. Hasibur, who has since returned to Bangladesh, alleged the actions of his employer and the dorm operator put him and his roommates at risk of contracting the virus and caused them emotional distress. He said, and I quote, "Should I succeed in my action, I hope that it will deter other employers and dormitory operators from similar actions towards their employees and residents in their care." He said this in his statement. A representative at Joylicious declined to comment when contacted by AFP, while VSPEC has not responded to email requests for comment.
The Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or CCCI, has opposed plans to impose strict quarantine measures again if the new variant of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes coronavirus disease or COVID-19, is detected in the country. CCCI President Felix Taguiam said Cebu's economy is still recovering, and stringent lockdown measures will create more economic pains. Sharing about his outlook for 2021, Taguiam pointed out that the economic health of Cebu cannot withstand another round of strict quarantine restrictions similar to what was experienced in 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic engulfed the world with disruptions, claiming lives and bringing the world to a standstill. Earlier, President Rodrigo Duterte said another lockdown was possible amid the threat of the new COVID-19 strain that has spread in other countries. The Philippines has not so far reported any case of the new coronavirus strain. The business leader said, to survive and take a path to the new normal, Cebu's business owners and leaders have had to rethink or redefine their business models and invest in new tools and digital technology. This include localizing supply chains and adopting workplace systems such as online marketplace and workforce mobilization practices such as work from home arrangements. Tagiyam emphasized that lowering the cost of doing business remains the main advocacy of the business sector here amid the economic challenges.
ASEAN in Focus, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
It says the best defense is still containment.
We are in uncharted territory.
Silent volume 450. FI on to 100%. Traffic ban. Consumption.
And you're still tuning in with ASEAN in Focus. A yellow robot dog called Spot, which found fame online for dancing to hit song Uptown Funk and during the new year as well, has been deployed to patrol a Singapore park and ensure people observe social distancing.
Stand at least 1 meter apart. Thank you.
Just the old model or the new model?
And for those around you, please stand at least 1 meter apart.
I think it's really going to be chilling in a way, it's something just looking around, and I'm not sure how it's going to react to it. I'm not sure how it's going to react to me, rather, when it's going to go near it.
Please stand at least 1 meter apart.
Just the old model or the new model?
And for those around you, please stand at least 1 meter apart.
Meanwhile, dozens of palm-sized baby turtles flipped and flopped on a beach as they made their way towards the crashing waves of the Indian Ocean under the watchful gaze of conservationists at a national park in Indonesia. Let's take a look.
usia dewasanya dari umur 25 tahun. Artinya dilepasin sekarang nanti bisa ketemu sama mereka lagi 25 tahun lagi.
Sembarang itu tapi itu
Sip.
Bisa barang bisa ya. Tapi kayak lali bisa. Sampai selesai enggak apa-apa ini.
Thank you, Crystal, for joining me today. Thank you always for your time. And I'm sorry I said Vietnam Bureau, but this is Crystal Ballesteros from our EBC Cambodia Bureau. Thank you always for your time.
It's my pleasure, and that's the latest news in the ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us today. Once again, I am Crystal Ann Ballesteros from your EBC Cambodia Bureau. Always keep safe and live in interesting times.
Thank you, Crystal. And I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back tomorrow. We'll live in interesting times.